Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. Generally, our first hour is general discussion, but our 2 hours are general discussion, or it's Saturday, so as long as you ask questions. So it can be a long day, a short day, whatever it turns out to be. So if you have questions for us, go ahead and throw those into Makana. Of course, there you can vote on the questions, so you can kind of guide us into what order you'd like us to talk about. And we tend to spend a little bit more time at the top of the hour than the bottom of the hour. So moving those questions around does make a difference. So if you're there, you can go ahead and do that. If you're not there, of course, you can go to askofficehours.global any time of the day, 24/7. You can go to askofficehours.global and ask your question. And we fed all the questions in that came over last night into the system today. So it's shiny and new and open. So if you've got some, go ahead and throw those in. And let's go ahead and jump into the first question. CJ, what do we have?
Okay, good morning. Liberty White from Atlanta, Georgia has the first question. Next to our very own Cindy Drozda, who are some of your favorite YouTube tutorial training channels and why? What part of their delivery do you find most engaging?
I was trying to really think about all of the... I opened up my channels. I was like, you have 183 channels. So I have many channels to work with. I think some of them are more educational. I do enjoy Mark Rober and Veritasium, Tom Scott. I like watching. I do keep track of Mr. Beast because of some of the audacious things he does. I don't know if you saw the water project that he just took on, but it's just I like to learn. That's not necessarily training, but it's I find it interesting. I do track Potato Jet is another one that I watch around cameras, and I do follow Tyler Stallman, who was on our show last week. So he's got great stuff around creator production and so on and so forth. So definitely check that out. And Audio University is a pretty good one as far as just talking about different pieces of this. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
My stuff tends to be not tech oriented, but what's interesting is I find that I'm more drawn to somebody's personality than their actual delivery or like video or audio content. It's interesting. It's such a great example of how, the story is everything, and people forget that. But there's a couple I really like. One is a guy named Designs by Donnie, and Donnie is a woodworker, and he makes tables and pieces of furniture on an amazing scale. Like he'll laminate together a bunch of wood, and then he cuts it and carves it and stuff. And he'll do these table pedestals that are, they're like this big around. They're giant. Got to be heavy. And then there's I really like and it's not really tutorial. And it's more education. It's I believe it's B1M. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but they analyze giant building projects. So like the B1M, today we're going to do the Burj Khalifa, and they talk about, the design and the construction of giant building projects. But again, it's like personality is more important than just, the design and the polish.
Yeah, I don't know if personality is more important for me, but it is definitely important. It is something that is fun. Dave Ratt is another one that I follow. He is the most no-nonsense audio guy. I think this is the audio engineer for the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and he just kind of tears stuff apart and talks about it, and you feel like he's lived a long life and in a short time. But he just is this great kind of like, this is just the way this works, and he kind of works through it. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I like second on Potato Jet. I watch him for all the drone stuff that he does. He's an amazing drone pilot, and quite a good personality too. I like Curtis Judd for reviewing audio stuff. He's great. He does very thorough audio reviews and comparative reviews for production equipment. He's great. Answers with Joe Scott. Not to be confused with the other Joe.
Or the other Scott, Tom Scott.
Or the other Tom Scott. Yeah, the other Tom Scott. He's very good at instructional, really informational stuff on strange subjects, on history and technology and everything that's weird. So those are my favorites, go-tos as far as instructionals. Let me think if there's... that's pretty much it. There's a lot of voiceover mic testing people out there. What is his name? Mr. Oh, I can't remember his name now. Not exactly on my subscribe list, but there's a number of the Booth Junkie. That's the one I'm thinking of. Booth Junkie, who does A/B comparisons of microphones. So that's a good place to learn about mics like the Stellar X2.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, there's so many out there, but just like Courtney, Curtis Judd, I love his videos because he's pretty calm and mellow, but he also shows things that are used by real working professionals, specifically audio folks. So you get to see how the mics that he uses a lot of the same mics that I have and used to sell. So Sankenkoss 11s, you get to hear the difference. And he's very fair. In fact, he used to buy a lot of the gear that he uses from me. And so we'd have these discussions. He's just an overall really good guy. Same with Caleb Pike, a DSLR news shooter or a DSLR shooter. He does that pairing as well. I love people that take 2 or 3 or 4 things and show them side by side or how they work together, because then you really get a grasp. It's not just one product, it's a marrying 2 or 3 together. And a gentleman who I just found recently that I'm surprised doesn't have a lot more subscribers is Crimson Engine. And I like this channel more for the behind the scenes and this is more of a filmmaker channel, but he's got a lot of great stuff on some of the higher end cameras like the Arri Alexas and stuff that I don't get to work with all the time. So it's nice to have somebody who breaks down directing and script writing and then lighting interviews, C500, Pro Wireless. So guys like that are really cool that are genuinely sharing their knowledge. I love people that are out there that are experts in the field and that are really loose with sharing their knowledge just because they want to bring everybody up.
Go ahead, CJ.
I was a big fan on YouTube of like Wendover Productions and Real Life Lore. They do these longer form looks at history, but then they broke off and started, I guess they started an independent video site outside of YouTube because they wanted to cover topics that would maybe, get them demonetized. So anyway, their nebula.tv does a good job. That's what they created, and that has some film and TV production, tech, making things, and it's just I have found the majority of the content that's on the site to be very, very entertaining and very worthwhile. So Nebula TV, worth a check.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I forgot one. Gerald Undone. I don't know if you mentioned him, Alex. I know he's great for reviewing cameras.
Yeah.
And Doug Johnson, Enterprise for mobile production, and using the type of equipment we're using here, for medium to low budget mobile production in the field. Doug Johnson's really good, and he does a lot of explainers on how he sets stuff up and why he uses a certain piece of hardware and what he finds detestable about another piece of hardware.
Next question.
Next question from Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida. Can you recommend a small teleprompter that works with a 9-inch iPad? Thanks.
Go ahead, Courtney.
I can't really recommend any of these because I have always built my own. But I just did a search on Google for cheap
when he says, just in case, Andy, when he says he builds his own, like he has an Emmy for building his own from scratch. Okay. Anyway, go ahead, Courtney.
Well, this is why I don't sell them anymore, because I search for cheap teleprompters and look at all these ones, $33.97 for an iPad. These are Feel World 8-inch teleprompter for iPad or smartphone, $49 from Amazon. So you just go down the line. These are pretty good. The prompter people make pretty good, inexpensive, but compared to these other Chinese releases, they can't match the price. They're $300 for a similar iPad mount, and they make pretty quality stuff. I can't recommend any of these others necessarily, but for $39, you could certainly give it a shot and try it out. And since you're going to supply the iPad, there's not a lot at risk there. It's just a piece of glass and some mounting hardware, really.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I was searching some time ago for all kinds of different sizes, shapes, and such, and I just went on Discord, and Scott Hancock from Tokyo mentions the one-take-only pad prompter has a 15-millimeter rig for iPad and a tablet up to 12.9, so you can put a Lilliput or a small HD in there. I like the idea of the rods, because the rods satisfy the mounting issues real fast.
Good, CJ.
I use the newer X14 for an iPad Pro. which is a good one. The one thing that I would caution you, though, is if you're shopping to put an older iPad into a teleprompter, I have an iPad Pro that has a little bit bigger bezel because it was the second generation before they went to the squared edges, and it says it'll fit a 12.9-inch iPad, but I ended up having to put binder clips on the end of my teleprompter because the bezels made it just a little too big.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, if you can't get a bigger one that's based on an actual teleprompter from like Prompter People, I think it's that buy once, cry once thing. The Elgatos, I'm hearing good reviews, but the screen is lower resolution than you would think. That it's not a full 1920 by 1080, so it's a 1280 by whatever the other number is. So it's pretty small and rinky-dink. It's like $295. So the one that Alex has, the iCan 12 inches, are also decent. But again, do you really need to have it based on an iPad that's the actual display, or do you mind using an external monitor? This is a product that's coming out to market pretty soon. This one's called the Ivy, and it's basically everything's built all into one. The webcam's actually built in, and this is the teleprompter inside of it. So that's another type of model. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend anything really on an iPad unless you just had to. We used one on Mad in the Kitchen, and it worked. I don't know what the model is, but it's one of those. If you could get a bigger display and use a real display, then your talent will be a lot happier than trying to read from such a small little device.
Yeah, and a lot of it also depends on how you're using it. Are you using it as an Interatron or are you using it as to read? If you're using it to read, I'm going to think that if you're doing an iPad, you're trying to read things off of it. And in that case, it works pretty well. There's a bunch of apps for the iPad that'll let you control it from your phone or from other things. So if that's what you're trying to do, if you're trying to actually have an image in there, then you'll have more challenges. But if you're actually just trying to have it pump text up there, and if you are, I would look at the Elgato as one of the options, because the problem with the Elgato is that it doesn't actually have an HDMI in. But the advantage is it can just kind of tie into something and play it out, a USB-C. But I think that I've seen the newers. I usually want a more complicated version of a teleprompter, but I've seen the newers used very successfully. These are I think the same one that CJ was talking about, which is the X14. We've also built our own a lot. I go to other countries and I can't carry a teleprompter, so I land in the country and literally find stuff and build them. Because it's a monitor at 45 degrees from a piece of one-way glass. I mean, you can find one-way glass. You'd be surprised anywhere in the world. You can find one-way glass. I have found it in capitals, but in Africa, there's somebody that's selling one-way glass, and you can kind of get those as needed. Next question.
Next question's a QR code from Tim McMillan in Poughkeepsie, New York. What software do they use to make NFL lower thirds?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I know a few years back they were using After Effects pretty extensively, and then when they consolidated their operations and moved it out to the West Coast, there's a certain graphic house that they use, and they're using After Effects. Anything else, including Cinema 4D.
Yeah, I mean, for some of the stuff that's done in post, they definitely use After Effects and other things like that. For the stuff you see live, so that we're talking about live versus post. So After Effects is definitely something that has been used for the post stuff done for NFL. For live, the NFL has been using and every station, every channel, every network uses something different. So it's not the NFL making decisions. It's typically when you're watching an NFL game, is what does CBS use? What does Fox use? What does Amazon use? And so usually almost all of them is a mixture of, for the NFL games, is Chiron and VizRT. So VizRT became kind of the thing in the early 2000s or maybe mid 2000s with Fox, and then that kind of took over. And these are not rendered out lower thirds. When you're watching an NFL game, you're looking at these interactive events. They build these, and I don't know what they're building them in now. When I was connected to that project, these were all built in Maya. So all of the 3D models and everything else were all built in Maya and all connected to it all. Then those are delivered back to VizRT. VizRT then is given behaviors, given processes, and that's how it's bringing all the numbers in, bringing all the downs, all that's happening in real time. And that's not what most of the software that we use on a day-to-day basis does. So that's what VizRT, Chiron, a couple other ones are really the owner owns that. Now the AR stuff that you see coming down, which is getting so good. Like it was a couple of years ago, it was sliding a little bit. I remember 4 or 5 years ago, it was kind of sliding against the field and everything else. And now it's like locked into the field. The graphics look better every single year. And now they have like they're making up their own fireworks. There's fireworks going off over the thing between as they're leaving a shot, or they have these big ones that look like a bunch of little stars, which are like the football players or the helmets. It's intense, and most of that's done in the Ross. Ross has a system that does that. Some folks from Ross are people we're connected to here in office hours, and so. And they do that, and it's a really, really impressive piece of. It's not the lower thirds, but it's impressive. And of course, for a lot of some games, Ross Expressions is another piece of software that kind of is used in some of those environments. But yeah, go ahead. About a lot of the 3D models, by the way, are still built in Cinema 4D. So and then they're delivered to an Unreal Engine of some sort or another to make that happen for like the Ross stuff, and then for I think they have their own now. I mean, everyone starts with Unreal, and then everyone starts to fork. But the other stuff is all kind of a built-in render. Yeah, go ahead, CJ.
The other topic that always fascinates me is just the data interchange. When how much of what you're seeing on the screen in terms of the numbers is getting controlled by the control room versus something getting fed from
It's all
assuming a
fed.
data connect with the scoreboard.
I mean, most of it's all queued. I mean, you're hitting go, 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 go. I mean, the scoreboard tells you some of the things but there's for most things that you see there is a person or a team to manage it. The budget for these things it's hard to get your head around. Like how many? I think that there's Guy. How many trucks were there when you visited the Thursday Night Football? Was it 8 or 12? I can't remember what the number was.
I
think there's 12
remember.
trucks.
It was about 8. I'd have to go back and look at some of the pictures, and they were very specific. Like different trucks had different things. Replay was just amazing, and then the Ross one was one unit, but it was shared with some other folks in there. Yeah. But it was amazing to see behind the scenes. I can't talk about a lot of stuff, but we were in after hours, and it was dazzling. I mean, it was just simply stunning to see the workflow and then meet some of the folks that are behind the scenes on that. I didn't realize how many people it took to run that replay. It's a lot of folks. I mean,
there's so many different, because you have different people running those cameras, and they're selling those back to the director. And there's many, many, many replays that are available on any given moment.
And then they had that drone shot, which was pretty amazing, where they just took off and pinned. So they used some of the AR and pinned the graphic as they went up, and that was just like mind-boggling too to see
the
how
drone or the
fly,
the sky cam. Was it a sky cam? The cable cam?
No, it was a drone,
an
actual drone with a camera that they pinned stuff on the field using some kind of trackers. And then when they lifted, the graphics stuck, and the drone went up, and it was just amazing to watch.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, like you mentioned, the AR stuff. I worked for VizRT in the early years when they were developing all that calibration stuff to calibrate to the field and interface to the cameras. And then Ross took it over after a number of years. But it was pretty amazing that they would pull a clean mat just using the green of the field or a difference mat to get the players over the top of the graphics, the line markers and the first down markers and so on. But that was pretty interesting. But Ross pretty much owns that now. I think VizRT may still do some of that. VizRT moved more into a lot of graphics.
A lot of the lower thirds is still VizRT process.
So,
I have to say, which is something that we could do in After Effects as a dare, not that because it's not getting live graphics, but if you want to learn how to use After Effects, just take the lower thirds from any NFL football game and try to reproduce them pixel for pixel, not like kind of like get close to it. Like all the little shades and all the little dots and all the little things that they're doing in the movement and the slow motion and everything else, have it so that yours could sit over top of it as a difference mat and it would be black. Just try that. That is like, I mean, for most people that would be you could do it. I realize you could do a whole semester in a art college or whatever on one iteration of those lower thirds. Like I watch them a lot. I just stare at the lower thirds. Usually the games I don't stare at as much, but I stare at the lower thirds and stare at the graphics, and it is. I mean, the level of graphics now, and when you see throwbacks where they show the graphics, some shot from a game in 2002 or whatever, you're like, wow, we've come a long way. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Did I hear challenge?
Yes.
The only thing you couldn't do as easily in After Effects is the 3D stuff. It's just not a 3D program per se.
Yeah. Next question.
Next question from Adrian Watkins in Wellington, New Zealand. Have any of the panel tried Room EQ Wizard?
Room EQ Wizard. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I just briefly took a look at it here. It's REW. It's software. It's downloadable. It's cross-platform. You do have to have a special microphone that they recommend, an instrumentation microphone. I saw there's a picture of it there. The Dayton Audio's EMM6, for example, to interface to their software. It's available for the Mac, Windows, and Linux. It's written in Java. So I haven't tried it out. I guess it does, calculates EQ and applies it somehow to your acoustical system, maybe. Not sure how that works, or whether it generates a profile that's downloaded somewhere, EQ profile that's downloaded somewhere into a mixer.
Yeah, I mean, there's a variety of these kinds of software that can basically, you're using impulses or samples, or you're just playing. It can be a variety of different, whether it's pink noise or white noise or other things, and that's going to give you a real solid. Most of them are pretty expensive. I don't know how expensive this one is, but most of them are pretty expensive pieces of software to make this actually work, and something that hopefully we'll talk more about. But it's cool. Yeah, this one looks interesting. I've never seen this one specifically, but it looks like a pretty interesting analyzation tool. Next question.
This comes from Andre Delay in Berlin. Alex, I'm very impressed with your black level change and how quickly you did it. The difference is huge. Thanks for making it an even better show.
Thanks. What Andre's talking about is that he complained about the fact that my blacks in my camera, not my camera, well, maybe my camera, but my both my camera and my screen. So if I'm doing a screen share, I don't know what I have up here. Hold on. Oh, yeah. I can share this. Hold on. I was reading an article, and I just want to make sure just want to make sure it was okay. This is a fascinating article, by the way. If you do Inside the Crypto Kingdom, it's all about Bitcoin and Bhutan, which I thought was just fascinating. Anyway, but what you'll notice here is you should notice that the blacks aren't as crushed as they used to be in the image that's there, so that everything doesn't go straight off to black. Also with mine, my image shouldn't go straight off to black either. Now with mine, I did a LUT. So what I did, the mistake I was making is I was doing LUTs where I was capturing footage off my camera, and then I was putting it into into Resolve, and then I was doing the correction, and then I was putting it back on my camera. And the problem was it wasn't correcting for the entire chain. So what I did is I ran my camera. I set my camera to turn off the LUTs. So it sent me basically an S-Log3 through the camera, through the switcher, into QuickTime, opened QuickTime up, and then captured the QuickTime frame. I then took that into Resolve and corrected it. And I did use this little guy here. So instead of trying to get all the correction working from there, I did this, which is actually, you have to do it upside down, which is like that. So I held it up like this, and I did a capture. And then I select those, and that gets me close to the color that I want. And then I made some adjustments to the black levels and so on and so forth. And then I load it on the camera. It usually takes a couple times. Like you look at it, you go, oh. And I'm still working on it. You'll see my camera change. I don't think it's perfect yet, but it's better than it was. So that is that's what I did with the camera. I did something similar to the screen. So what I did with the screen, how do you do that with your Mac? And so what I did is I ran the Mac Mini out into QuickTime, and then I went full screen on the screen that I wanted to actually adjust, so that I didn't get it. And then I used this little guy here. This is a Data Color Spyder X or whatever, and I let it correct the monitor for what was going through the switcher, through UVC to QuickTime. I let it correct the entire pipeline as opposed to just the monitor, which is what I've been doing in the past. And I'd done a version of this years ago, but there was something very wrong with the pipeline, so it didn't work perfectly. And then I let it go, and so now I have kind of that's my pattern at the moment. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
So curious, makes perfect sense. What does your monitor look like to the naked eye right in front of you now?
It looks like that monitor is a monitor that's really so I can deliver to the show, so it doesn't really matter what it looks like in a lot of ways, but the blacks look a little lifted. The blacks look a little lifted. It looks a little warmer than I would expect. And, I think I just kind of gave up that Black Magic's probably not going to fix this. So I went ahead and just did something until it gets fixed somewhere. I figured I'd make some adjustments. So yeah, it doesn't look bad. It just looks a little raised, the blacks just look a little raised on that one monitor. Because all of them, when I did that, of course, I went through the trouble of correcting all the monitors. So they all look the same, and this one just looks a little bit more raised blacks. I will say that this is a great I forgot how much I like this little guy, that you just kind of throw it onto things and it goes, and all your monitors will look the same. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Couldn't you put the LUT you generate with your Spyder into one of those bidirectional converters?
Yeah,
So
what I really want to do is potentially use a LUT from actually build a LUT. The problem with this one is that so I love this little data color. It's nice and easy. But it generates an ICC profile. It doesn't generate a LUT, but they're both the same thing. I mean, an ICC profile is a LUT for your monitor. So what I want to do is I've been I don't have it figured out yet, but I'm researching. There are apps online. I never thought of asking for this, but of course I was like, well, what I really want is a LUT, and I started searching. Of course, there are tools that will convert your LUT to an ICC profile. So what I'm looking at is the ability to take an image in from a computer, take it into Resolve, fix it the way I want it. And this is not usually what you'd want to do because you would not have an accurate, you'd want the data color to give you an accurate number. But if I want the monitor to be a certain color, I can go in there and adjust it. And so what I want to be able to do is take what I have right now and then convert it to, convert that file a little bit to convert that file and just raise those blacks up if I wanted to have more control over it. But, I'm now getting into a deep water I just need to always know that I'm adjusting that monitor to look good on the show, and I should never use it to think that any of those colors are accurate. Go ahead, CJ.
Now, when you're using the Spyder X to do the calibration, are you calibrating each monitor individually, or are you calibrating a single monitor and then using the studio match function to try and match that one monitor?
I calibrate each monitor on its own. Yeah, I just go from one monitor after the other. I want them to all be independently accurate from where they are. I haven't done the studio match yet.
And I've thought about that too. So then I look at the studio match and I wonder why would I don't know why I would go to the studio match versus the regular calibration, but I've been tempted.
I think if you had all the same monitors, which I do. I mean, I have 4 monitors that are the same. Not quite the same. That's the problem. I have 3 monitors that are the same and 2 monitors that are another version of Dell's monitors. And so it's not, the problem is different monitors are going to have different things. And I think that the problem is the monitors are all set differently. You do the best you can to get them all in the same place. But to me, it's dangerous to be like, you always want to relate to reality as much as you can. You want to relate to reality and not your construct of reality. Your construct of when you relate to the construct of reality, you get different results because your construct isn't accurately representing the real thing. So I don't want it to assume that these things are the same. I want them to measure those. Trust but verify. Next question.
Next question's in from Douglas Carmichael. In comments from the NAB to the FCC, they said more C-band satellite spectrum would be needed, quote, if 4K programming becomes widespread, unquote. Outside of the cinema sector and streaming, wouldn't most broadcasters need expensive upgrades for 4K end-to-end?
Yeah, I mean, 4K is going to be hard. Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell. Yeah, I got 2 parts to this response that I have. First of all, C-band is being repacked. They're in the process of being repacked, and a lot of stations are losing their C-band space-time segments. So I wouldn't think they'd be moving 4K to C-band. I think it's more of a higher frequency, like a KU band or KU Powered Plus band that gets you more bandwidth or more baud rate inside the, I said baud rate, didn't I? Inside that satellite. So that's one part of it. And then the other part, I don't think you're going to see anything being upgraded to 4K in the broadcast business because they just don't have the money to do it.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, and for DirecTV and Dish, the uplinks, they don't have the transponders and all the satellites. They'd have to replace all the satellites. Maybe they've been in the process of doing that, but it would be a tough call to. I've been in that DirecTV Earth station that's over in Culver City, and it's quite an amazing location with all the dishes that have all the uplinks and downlinks from all the local stations, from all the networks.
Check out their Boulder, Colorado operation.
Right, Boulder is also very big. But, the surprising thing is I bought a new television set with a next-gen ATSC3 receiver on it. And I thought, well, now I'll be able to get some of these 4K reception over the air. And I went through all the local television stations. There's only 2 and they're independents in L.A. that are broadcasting on next-gen ATSC3, and they're not in 4K. And, in fact, ABC is 720p here. Yeah, the main ATSC1 is only broadcasting in 720p. And there's only about 5 stations that are broadcasting in 1080. And all the rest of them are at 720. So jumping to 4K is going to be a major push for most local television stations. So because even in LA, big market, most of them can't afford it.
Yeah, I don't know how. I don't know when broadcast is ever going to go past 1080i. And so I think the NAB, everybody's pushing. You have to fight for somebody, and we're fortunate that NAB is out there fighting for it, regardless of whether I agree with the veracity of their argument. It's really good that NAB is out there fighting, because what didn't happen is no one was fighting for spectrum when they were taking away our wireless. Like, there was not a wireless consortium that had a representative that said, "Hey, you're about to cost everybody hundreds of millions of dollars of having to buy new wireless mics, and somebody should pay for that." Like, what really should have happened there is that the FCC should have put as part of their little cash crop. I mean, because this is just free money for the FCC. They're selling something. They're selling, bandwidth. They're selling. And so they've licensed it into a point where they just generate revenue from it. And they just decided to take it away from a lot of people who had pieces of hardware that only could use that bandwidth. And what should have been part of it is, when you're paying $18 billion to take all this bandwidth away, add another $1 billion and do it as a payout so that everyone can buy new hardware, because you ruined everything for everyone. So I have to admit that decision process has shaken my confidence in the FCC. Like, just its ability to do anything that makes sense. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm willing to fight everything that they want to do now. Like, I just think that they should not be allowed to change the frequencies anymore because they've proven that they're not good at it.
It might also be Congress that's pushing the FCC on that.
Yeah, I just think Congress shouldn't be allowed to do anything technical, because those are digital children. So the FCC, we hope that they have some experience, although the folks that are running right now don't have any experience. They just have theories. Next question.
Next question is a QR code from Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'd like 4 mics for Foley recording. Best 4 versus worst 4.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I'm surprised Courtney has it. Oh, there it goes. He just raised his hand. So you're going to hear better info than I'm going to give you. But I love the Sennheiser 416s for that, because they're just very versatile mics. And as far as the worst I've seen in a while is the faux U87 that Alex just bought for $20.
Yeah, just having fun. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, it really depends on what the chain is, but also where you're recording at. If you're outdoors, it's a different scene. If it's a nice sound stage, shotguns are very popular. The 416 that Mitchell just recommended, DPA 4017, Neumann KMR 81, MKH 50. Those are a couple of the more popular. The gentleman that I like to follow, a friend of mine, is Watson Wu. I'll put a link to him in the chat. He records mostly automobile and guns, and these are for video games. And his style is totally different, but I love his website because he breaks down the recorder, the microphone, the wind protection, and then some of the GAC that he uses to secure these microphones to cars and to various motor vehicles. So again, it just depends. As far as worse, I don't have a worse microphone. Well, maybe Alex's junky, whatever that was that you picked up for $20.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, almost all the Foley work I've done or seen done has been with 416s or 816s. 816s, which is the super cardioid, hypercardioid. If you need to get in there and have the sound of some little tinkly piece of mechanical device that you need to capture and get rid of all the rest, otherwise you're going to be recording the Foley artist's breathing and that kind of stuff. So if you need a lot of technical detail, use the supercardioid 816 and 416s for almost everything else, for footsteps and all your basic Foley work, and almost all of it's done inside, with the exception of recording sound effects in the field. Then I used a lot of 816 for car buys, during the car drive bys or airplane overheads and stuff, so that you could pick them out of a complicated soundscape with an 816 and get good Doppler shift when the car goes by following or not following the car with the microphone. So usually we would always stick with Sennheisers.
And Mickey says Sennheiser 416, Neumann 81i, Shure SM58, and the Crown PZM 30D or Shure Beta 91A. But number one would be the 416. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I was just commenting on a guy mentioning recording firearms. Very, very tough to do because it's not the actual sound coming from the gun itself. It's the slapback that you get. So when you get that, you have to be very careful to do it. That's quite a thing. I used to hang with the guys at Hollywood Edge, and they did an entire CD of gunshots.
I got into a conversation with Ben Bird about gunshots. We were waiting for the Avid to come back up again because it was crashing, and he said, the problem is exactly what you said, that people point the mics towards the gun. And he said, there's this one place in California that has just enough grass to go and just enough trees to go and just enough rocks to go. And I said, where is that? And he goes, I can't tell you. And he goes, but that's where I record all the guns. Go ahead, Courtney.
And recording ricochet. That's what the SM58 is for, recording gunshots, Mickey suggested. So you need a dynamic microphone for doing that won't bottom out. And the problem with condensers is on a high concussive sound like a gunshot, there's a shock wave that will cause the diaphragm of the condenser to actually touch the backplane. And there's a period of zero sound if you look at it on a waveform, while it overmodulates or shorts out, basically. And then it comes back to hear in order to have it up at a level where you can hear all that great echoes off the foreign hills and something, to hear all that stuff in the background that makes the gunshot sound bigger and better, you have to have it up at a level that gets shorted out by the impulse of that shock wave of the gun if you're too close to it. But a lot of times, most of the gunshots have been replaced with howitzer recordings. In most films, that's what they use.
Yeah, I've done some of that with Sennheiser MD421. Is another one that I've used for that type of recording. Next question.
Next question, the QR code from Zach Jeffers in Spokane, Washington. Did anybody notice the heatsink on the iPhone in the latest behind-the-scenes Apple video at 57 seconds?
So I looked at where you sent it, and I couldn't find a heatsink. So I'm not sure I don't know if anyone else looked at it. I saw the question and I opened it up, and I couldn't find let's see, maybe I was looking at the wrong time because I was looking at a time that was.
Here's a close-up of it. I'm not seeing what the heatsink is, but I do see some glue there.
No, I think that what you're looking at, the heatsink, I think it's going up and down the side. So I think that heats what you're talking about as a heatsink, I think, is actually, that's how that moment rig looks. That zigzag that's on the side there that's just the way the moment rig is built. So it's not a heatsink that I know of. I think it's just the construction process that they made there. So I don't think that that's I'm just going to try to circle it there. Oh, I got the wrong cable. Anyway, so I think that's the issue. I don't think it's a heatsink. I don't think the phone needs a heatsink. Next question.
Next question from Paul Wallace in Hot Springs, Arkansas. In a large single-story home of 3,000 square feet with 70 Wi-Fi devices and 20 Ethernet devices, what would you use for routers, switches, Google Home devices, Amazon devices, portals, etc.? Assume 2 or 3 Netscape or other router specify model numbers. I think we mean Netgear.
Go ahead, John.
Paul, you weren't listening yesterday, so Guy Cochran and I answered this question yesterday. I'm ready for you. I did a topology map for you with model numbers. The Ubiquiti Dream Machine Pro has 8 ports, and then it's got two of the SPDIFs on it for uplinks as well. And then you just get the appropriate access points off of your Dream Machine Pro. It's game over, done. They don't support your 2 or 3 Netscape routers, however.
Go ahead, Guy.
I don't know why Paul's not listening. Paul, listen. Dream Machine. And then switches.
Switches,
so
but no, you don't need multiple routers.
The big deal. So I had the same setup in our building, which was a city block long, and I had 10 of these access points, and I could go from end of the building to the other end and just hop. And that's the cool thing about these. I know Courtney was saying you could have one for upstairs and one for downstairs, but then if you have shared NAS storage on your network or devices that you want to talk to, then it's a mess, because how do you join those two together? And then just the interface. So here's mine. What I have, I just have a couple of the AC Pro, a Nano, 2 of the 8-port 150 switches, and then I have some Netgear stuff. But when I was looking at this yesterday, one of the cool things is that you can actually see where if you upload your floor plan, you could actually see where, if you position your access points, you can see where they radiate out from. So there's just really sophisticated, because this is like probably the number one router system for small business. And so that's basically what you're doing, Paul. You're above just a regular consumer in a home. You need something a little bit more industrial or commercial. And so this is kind of a sweet spot with the Dream Machine Pro and a couple of their dedicated switches that have PoE. So then with the PoE, you can supply power to those access points.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, and just a reminder that a lot of these home IoT things like the LED lights and anything that's controllable over your Wi-Fi that has these built-in Wi-Fi controllers for Internet of Things. Almost all of them are 2.4 gigahertz. So make sure you maybe have one. I've run into a lot of problems with the newer, fancier routers that are multi-frequency but use the same SSID on all of them and supposedly auto switch. But a lot of those LED controllers that have the Wi-Fi built in that are 2.4 gigahertz, they get confused and try and lock, and try and go to the SSD, the one SSD name that serves all 3 of them, and the router is piping the information out over 5 gigahertz, and all the 2.4 gigahertz devices aren't seeing it. So it's a big problem. So I would just, if you have a lot of those devices, make sure that your router has a separate SSID for the 2.4 gigahertz and keep all of your Internet of Things LED stuffs on that particular SSID.
Go, CJ.
And having been down this road with too many Hue bulbs and Sonoses and Apple TVs and, iWhatevers, if it matters, hardwire it. It's going to make everything else that's on Wi-Fi infinitely better. If the only thing that's on your Wi-Fi is your laptop and your phone, if it matters, run a wire.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Next question comes to us from Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. I want to do a 24-hour stream, which would be a looped video along with audio. My machine has 24 gigabytes of RAM, an NVIDIA 3050 card, and is in a gigabit network. Would this work okay for this purpose with either VMix or OBS?
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, tons of people do this on OBS. I'm not sure. Does YouTube let you do 24 hours anymore?
You just won't record it.
Oops,
Yeah. You can. I mean, there are some streams on YouTube that have been up there for a year. If you go to like Lo-Fi Girl or whatever, I don't know when the last time they reset Lo-Fi Girl. It might have been 4 or 5 years ago. So yeah, it's and that's a stream. That's not even a loop. They're like changing the music, all the time. So yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I think a lot of people have done it with both VMix and OBS. There's a lot of things that you can do that. You just need a playout system to make that actually happen. But your computer should be plenty. I mean, you could do this on a Mac Mini. Next question.
Next question from Jeff Francis in Columbia, South Carolina, USA. Does anyone have experience with the Kindle Scribe? Has it replaced your paper notebooks or journals?
Yeah, there's a who is the other one that I get all the ads for? It's the so Kindle Scribe is the one that you can kind of draw on, but the one that they are competing with is what is the Remarkable. And I have to admit, the Remarkable 2. Let me see if I can show it to you here. This is the one that let's see. There's a Black Friday. I have not gotten the Remarkable 2. I've used it at, like, when I'm at CES, they'll have a booth. This is the one here. I don't know what the price is compared to the Kindle, but I have to say that my experience of using this was so magical. I'm just terrified that I'm not going to use it. Like, I'm terrified that it'll end up in a pile somewhere, and I'll go back to my iPads or whatever. But it feels like a piece of paper, and it captures all of the all the stuff. But this is like my thing that if I decide at some point I just have $300 that I'm not going to spend on cameras or not going to spend on improving my studio, this is what I probably spend it on. It just, the feel of it is so good, as far as it just feels like you're drawing on paper, except you're drawing digitally, and it lasts forever. And I don't know, again, I don't know what the, it's one of those things, like I just can't justify. I just keep on looking at it going, I can't justify buying that. The Kindle Scribe looks like it's in a similar price point. So, and I have to admit, yeah, it's a little bit less. The Kindle Scribe is you can see it. I think it started a little above it. It may be that it adds Kindleness to it, that you can write into it. I think that might be that you can read the Kindle stuff and draw over top of it. So I think if you want to do a Scribe over top of it, it would make sense. For me, I just want to draw and do things. I don't really mark up books. So if you're looking at reading books and drawing, I think the Kindle Scribe is probably the right solution. If you're looking at just drawing, I can't imagine Amazon doing something nicer than a purpose-built company. Amazon's just not that company. They don't build the best of a purpose-built system. If it was dramatically less expensive, like $150, you go, oh, okay, and it's going to be not as good, but it's going to be close. I think that if you're trying to mix and match those two things, I think that the Scribe could be good. If you just want to draw and write as a board, I think the Remarkable is probably just a little bit more expensive. And I've only used that one, and it was just, again, it's like one of those, someday I'll buy one of those, and I'm just, anyway, go ahead, Chris.
Recently, I saw an ad for something, and I think the key to this, well, it depends on what you're using it for. I saw something, it was about the size of a keyboard, and in the ad that I saw, it was mounted right in front of somebody's keyboard, and it was designed for, and as an editor, although I like to do everything digitally, copy this, paste there, not be tied to writing something down with a pencil, it was just like a great scribble strip, like, oh, here's an RGB value, or here's a frame offset, or just remember these 3 numbers, because I can't copy and paste all 3 of them. I know there's utilities to do that, but I'm not smart enough to do that. But to me, the answer to it was the form factor, so that it's convenient where and when you need it. And if somebody knows what this, CJ's pointing up something. I need to see that, CJ. Send me a link to that.
It's a dry erase board that's the size of a keyboard that just lets you scribble down on it. I've got a couple of these.
There you go.
Okay, that's a little primitive. I don't live in a cave anymore.
I do.
But this thing was digital, and you could even do things in different colors, as I recall. But to me, that was the key to it. It's like the form factor, where it's going to live in my messy universe here.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised at the price of these things because, on the Black Friday sale from Amazon, they're $304, and they're usually $419 or something. And just have a small slate that you can write or draw on. The better priced ones that you can get a lot cheaper would be the Donald Duck Magic Slate.
How is yours so much more expensive than mine? Yours is, you got a different price than mine. Like, hold on, what was
that's the Black Friday?
Courtney had the 64 gig. You had the 16.
64 gig. Yeah, this is
okay.
A real man's way. But if you want to go, cheap, for about $2 or $2.99, I think you can get the Donald Duck Magic Slate, and it looks almost the same.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that all the money spent in these tablets, and I actually got to talk to the folks at Remarkable about it when I was at CES a couple years ago, and all the money is spent on the user experience. Like it is just to make it feel like paper but be digital, and to be able to get to things quickly. And they were like, "There's no business if you don't make it totally seamless. Like if it's not something that is completely you can just do it. There's no business for them, because if it's slightly not as good, then you just use an iPad." So this is, and they really were like, this is not just for people who don't have iPads. This is even for people who have iPads. And part of it is that, and I get part of the way there. One of my iPads is covered with a paper substance, and that's the one I use for all of my all of my ideas and everything else. I only use my not my newest iPad, but my older iPad, because I put this paper substance over top of it, and that friction makes a huge difference, like just massive difference in my how I feel when I'm doing that. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
So wait a second, you have an iPad that you put paper on. Isn't that a legal pad?
No, it's got paper. It's got a paper.
Do you use whiteout to correct mistakes?
I do not use whiteout. It's got like a paper surface, but it's not paper. It's not paper. Here, hold on.
Because they make notepads for that, and they're considerably less expensive, and you don't have to have an Apple ID attached to it. I'm just saying. I just want to make sure we're all
they
on the
have
same
ones that make
page. Literally.
So it's hard to describe, but this surface that I stuck this sticker onto feels like paper, and so your pen pulls across it like paper, and it is twice as pleasurable to draw on. Like it's much better.
At a certain point, this world has just got way too complicated.
I want them to actually make the nibs a little bit rougher. And I've thought about getting nibs and roughing them up a little bit so that they would scrape across that just a little bit rougher than that. And so that's my next thing. Next question.
Next question from Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia, and here on the panel. I need to upgrade my switch and my setup. Are there any recommendations from the panel to at least 8 ports?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Tony, it's funny because I'm doing exactly the same thing. I just pulled it out of the box for you. But it's a Netgear. It's a GS308 EPP. And what I suggest by going with something like this is that power over Ethernet is something you're probably going to need at some point. This is the PoE Plus, so it's got a few more watts available in it. And the next step up from that would be one that Guy is going to recommend.
Go ahead, Guy.
How did you know? I'd have to do the expensive option. So if you need an unmanaged switch, you can do what Mitchell is talking about. But did you want to use NDI or Dante, Tony?
Actually, it's a little bit complicated, but what I'm trying to do is...
I love complicated. Come on, bring it.
I'm having to bring over... we've been using a Mac Mini Basic for conversation with Tony Mobley with MimoLive, and we are running into some issues. So what I'm planning to do is to utilize the Mac Mini and my MacBook Pro M1 Pro to be able to handle the weight of what we're trying to do with the show. So my Mac Mini does not have, my MacBook Pro does not have an Ethernet connection. It is Wi-Fi only. So I have to wire it because we don't want to do a show with it being on Wi-Fi. So that's the reason for the need for the switch. The complication part is, where am I going to put it in terms of the setup? Because I don't have any room on the table on my desk. So trying to figure that out too. But more and more devices in my setup seem to need to be connected with a wire. So that's kind of the complexity of it. And then I have such limited real estate in terms of this desk.
Yeah, that's not complicated. Just the simple one that Mitchell, I have something all queued up here that's super complicated. So I'll just say that you just need a little StarTech USB-C to Gigabit Ethernet adapter, and then that way, in a simple switch, unmanaged switch like what Mitchell was going to show. And because I thought you were going to say that you're getting into NDI or Dante or something, and so I was going to pull out this $500 option.
That's part of it.
Under 100.
That's part of it, but Mr. Clark Lopez Waterman would have to explain that to you because Mickey and I and Clark, we were on last night and trying to figure it out, and it's part of it is we're trying to do something that with MimoLive and with the infrastructure that I have that really we're stretching, but we're trying to make it work. And so we had some real serious issues this past Wednesday, but we were able to get the show through because Mr. Waterman was able to be creative and use Cloudflare to get it done. But we were almost at the point where we were almost having to cancel the show from last Wednesday.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and at the chat, and even Mickey's just saying you just need some of the inexpensive unmanaged. But for those that are listening that want the more expensive big guns, the M4250, this is an 8-port that has these fancy NDI profiles where you can go and configure, but we don't have to go through any of that. But anyways, that's the cool thing about some of the more expensive stuff. But I don't think that if you're not using NDI, then I would just get a simple unmanaged and then get a USB-C to Ethernet adapter and call it a day.
NDI is part of the equation that we're talking about going forward. There are, like I said, we're trying to figure it out sort of on the run, but I just really want to get some ideas and we're going to take care of business. So
well, it's one of those buy once, cry once. You might have an extra switch if you do decide to go NDI. If you buy the cheap one that Mitchell showed, and then later on you might have to spend the $500 and get one of these guys, and that way you can do proper NDI. But I would recommend getting a USB adapter for each machine, or a separate Ethernet card inside if it's a desktop machine. And that way they're each connected to the switch on their own port with their own dedicated profile. But again, we're going a little long. I see Alex is like,
No, there's no rush. No rush.
Okay.
No, I'm not rushing you at all. I'm just saying, yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I'll tell you. I'll tell you.
I want to say, Mitchell and Guy, thank you so much for consideration. The things that you share, I'm definitely going to be looking at it. I am getting something from Amazon that's going to help us immediately in terms of just connecting the MacBook Pro. But I know that this, also need to upgrade the 8 Mini. So, which one do I get, going forward based on what I'm doing, so.
Sounds good.
But thanks,
we'll
guys.
keep asking. Just keep working on it. Keep asking us. Obviously, you're taking advantage of after hours, but please ask some of the questions on the show here, because when we answer them for you here, we're answering them for a lot of people who aren't asking the question. So we really appreciate you bringing those up, Tony, here. It's great. Next question.
From up on the Susquehanna River in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania, it's John Foltz. Could someone explain how to calibrate the monitor after you use the Spyder? Does the software do it, or do you adjust the screen yourself?
Yeah. So what happens is that you take this and you set it down. There's some software that you download for the Spyder X. That is the one that I'm using here, and you set it down on your desktop, and it measures your environment, and then it gives you a target that it's going to go for, and then what you do is you end up taking this and you pull this apart and you hang it. You just use this as the counterweight. You kind of hang it down over top, and it'll give you a target to put it on. And you hang it down over there, and then what it's going to do is it's going to go through a series of colors and gray colors and colors and everything else. And then what it's measuring is what is the setting on the monitor versus what I'm reading. And that's the key, is it now has the whole loop. It can say, I'm sending you this, what are you getting? I'm sending you this, what am I getting? And so it allows it to sit there and go, basically do a Marco Polo event. And so it can figure out what that is. It will then ask you sometimes it says your monitor is really low. So go into your monitor settings and change brightness to it then you keep on hitting update, and it'll keep on measuring the brightness so that you get the monitor to the brightness that it expects. It then it finishes its calibration. And so then it runs that calibration through, and then it saves out a profile that you can use, an ICC profile that you can use there. And that's how it works. And you can do it for each monitor. Again, I used to do it like when I did a lot of work on my computer. I used to probably do it once every 3 months to make sure that it was the same, and it really takes all the work out of it, and it gives you a fairly accurate. I wouldn't say it is as accurate as some of my color accurate monitors, but it definitely got me within range where I'm not making horrible mistakes based on my monitors, and so and it's effortless. Like you just hit the button and go back to watching TikTok until it's done for the most part, except for there's a couple buttons in between. Not that I watch TikTok while I'm doing profiles, but you know. We of course are going to have we're going to finish up the second hour with as many questions as you post. So it's up to you about how many you do. A quick reminder: regardless of when we end at 9:00, we'll have a volunteer meeting. That volunteer meeting is just a little catch up, answer your questions, and talk about what's coming up and talk about some of the opportunities. So stay tuned for that. And now we're going to go ahead and jump into the second hour. I'm so proud of myself. I do that. Oh, see, I ruined it by talking about how proud I am about the perfect close. It's Saturday, so I can talk about those kinds of things. Anyway, next question.
Next up, Craig McFarland from Boston, Massachusetts. Mac Photos is showing that I have 500 duplicates, but I don't trust it will make the right decisions if I click the merge button. Is there a better process or utility to clearly show how it will merge photo and metadata?
I have to say that I've never done that because I have the same problem that you have, which is that I'm afraid that I'd rather just take up the space and have two of them, because every time I've let iPhoto do something, I've lost a lot of great photos by letting iPhoto do work on my photos. So I'm like, how about you just leave them alone? They'll both be there. I wouldn't use that software. I wouldn't use it. 500 photos. I mean, you're talking to someone who I've got, I think, 200,000 photos in my iPhoto library. So I'm not that, 500 is like a noise. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I'd be very careful because, you don't know. Sometimes you'll send photos to someone, you'll keep the same file name and they'll send it back. It'll be down-resed, and so it'll go back into a folder somewhere. And it'll show up as a duplicate with the same name, but it won't be the same size. So the best way to do stuff like this is to get a program like dedupe that looks at the files, doesn't look at the names. It looks at, does a hash of the file to check the checksum, and will compare the two files. If they have exactly the same checksum, which means they're exactly the same size, they have the same file name, and they have the same metadata, then it can remove one, and you can tell it which one to remove, or it can isolate all the duplicates into a separate folder or something, and then you can decide whether or not to remove them. That's the safest way. I don't know about the Mac Photos software. I wouldn't trust it.
Go ahead, CJ.
Another tool that I've used, again, you have to have the willingness to put in the time and the discipline to never hit the auto button, although I think for most of us, fear has prevented us from hitting the auto button, and for good reason. There's another utility on the App Store called Photo Sweeper that does a good job of allowing you to set up what the limits are. Pick the larger photo or the newer photo, or the naming convention is doesn't contain the word small or thumbnail, and then you can actually go through and see what it is determining is the duplicate and what is it's going to keep before you proceed. But again, it takes a long time. But Photo Sweeper, I'll throw it into Makana.
Yeah, and I want to correct. I said 200,000. It's actually only 65,000. I have 200,000, I think, unread emails. so I think that might be what's in there. But it's only 65,000 images. And you have to understand the way I take photos. Like, I don't take photos. I think some people take photos of one thing. Mine are more like, hey, I saw an interesting theater, so let's take a picture. Let's take lots of close-ups. This is all. I just go into reference mode. So I was taking, because I've had to do neon before. So if I see a neon sign that I like, I'm like, I will take many, many photos to figure out exactly what's going on there. So especially when it's cloudy, because it's very diffuse and it's easy to get all the details out of it. And then I found a potato bug in the house. That's six of those 65,000 photos is me playing with a potato bug, trying to figure out what it is. It is not a weta. I thought it might be a weta, but it's not. It's a potato bug. Next question.
Coming to us from Rion Smith in Trinidad, West Indies, does YouTube Live allow the user to make money like how regular videos do, especially if they are up live 24 hours per day?
I don't know if it will. I don't know if it monetizes. It has the capability of interrupting live and doing it. I think that I don't know how. I've never seen it interrupt a live stream. I've seen it interrupt it later with ads, but I'm not sure how that mechanism works with live streaming that's there. If you do it for 24 hours and you have a record, or if you got a record, it might monetize it, but usually it's hard for it to target that. So I don't think you'll make much money. Usually live is a great way to excite your audience about your VODs. It's not necessarily a great way to generate revenue. From the ROI there is not there. Next question.
From Scott Mueller in Germantown, New York, any suggestions for a laptop to run VMix? Cyber Monday is coming, and I want something that will be as solid as my desktop.
Go ahead, Guy.
I don't think you're going to find something as solid as your desktop. I'm running this show on a gaming laptop. I've seen some people have pretty good success with them. It just depends on if you're using NDI or if you actually need cards. Something like this big old beast. This is from Next Computing, called the Radius, and that way you can still put cards inside of the thing, and then it's like a briefcase, and this is the screen right here, and then you just bring a keyboard along. So I'll put the link in the chat. Man, that one's heavy. So it just depends on what you want to be doing. CJ's just rolling laughing. So that's probably the biggest thing that I've pulled out on the show.
That's awesome.
But yeah, the gaming laptops from MSI, I've seen some people have some great success with them. And this one, it's a Razer laptop. I cranked the RAM up to 128 gigs on it, but still, it's a little iffy. I've had it overheat and lock up on a show. So it's one of those things where I've got it lifted up, got fans blowing underneath it. It's maxed out. You wouldn't believe how many things I have hooked up to this thing. So the Razer ones are what I use. Would I suggest it for a show? Probably not. I take that.
I had a Razer. I had a Razer go to sleep one day and never woke up. it just never woke up, and that was it. I was like, I am never going to buy a computer. And then I called them, and they like, there's not. It was out of warranty or whatever. And I was just like, and they said, there's nothing we can do about it, and it's just something that. I mean, it was a little bit of like, well, that's something that happens with the laptop, and I was like, okay, I'm never buying a Razer again.
Was that Occam's Razer that you bought?
Yeah, exactly. But I've used we've seen people using MSIs a lot on events, so that's the one that I've probably seen the most. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I was going to recommend the MSI. I bought an MSI. It's right over there. It's my main daily laptop. It has I think it's a 12th gen Intel. I don't have the 13th gen. The new ones out have the 13th gen, and they have the GeForce 4060s in them, RTX 4060s. So look for one that has a NVIDIA GeForce RTX board in there with separate memory and as much extra memory as you can slam into that thing. Put at least 32 gigs and make sure that the GeForce has its own dedicated memory. And they work pretty well with MSI. I've been very happy with mine. They do have that annoying color panel and an RGB color backlight for the keyboard, which I managed to turn off or at least stick to one color because it drives me crazy when it's doing it, changing colors. It drives me nuts.
The kids these days. Next question.
Next question comes from Douglas Carmichael. The electric cooperative where I live will be offering 1 gig over 1 gig or 2 gig fiber service in the fall of 24. I have an AmpliFi Alien, Ubiquiti's consumer brand, router. What router would the panel suggest for a 2 gigabit symmetrical connection?
What does that Dream Machine go to? Is it a 2? Does it do? It does 10 gig, right? Or is it a 10 gig router? So Dream Machine. That's what we'd recommend. Next question.
Next question from Kyle Hammond in Chicago, Illinois. I want to stream a single performance to 2 separate YouTube links. 1, the show is planned, and 2, the show with an audio description audio track. I plan to stream to both locations via MimoLive. Will my M2 Mini handle this?
Should be able to. The only thing that you'll get yourself in trouble with is if you're trying to scale it in any way. Scaling takes a lot of processing power. Compression does not. So I would, of course, what you want to do is test and make sure that it works. Run a couple hours against it. Look at your performance. Look at what you're hitting. Look at what the things are. But an M2 should just hum through that. It should not. I don't know how you set up those separate. I don't know how you set that audio feed up in Mimo, just because I haven't had to do multi-language or separate pieces there. But it should work fine. Yeah, I don't think that. I don't think it should be a problem. Next question.
Next question from Andre Delay in Berlin. Do you have some kind of checklist that you go through before starting recording and streaming? I recently was stumped by too low bitrate because a setting wasn't executed like I thought it was.
Yeah, we have a lot of checklists, like, for streams. So you'll hear, depending on the size of the stream, you'll hear a lot of checks going off. And oftentimes we've gone to, you'll hear somebody reading those out, Is this done? Is this done? Is this done? Is this done? In many of the larger events that I have, they sound more like a NASA liftoff than anything else like this. And you hear the individual person going check and if it's one person managing it in the list, you'll hear this confirmed, this confirmed, this confirmed, as we get ready to make that happen. So you absolutely want to build checklists. It's just very hard, especially in the heat of the moment. It's very hard to figure that out. That's also why we often start our streams. We try to find an excuse to start the streams early. So we want to find a way to start the live stream 30 minutes, 60 minutes ahead of time, so that before the stuff that's important is happening, the worst thing to do is start right before your VIP. And I've had to do this, but you start right before the VIP walks out. And if something's wrong, there's no way to correct it. And so you really want you always want some kind of, it can be a pre-show or a warm-up. But a lot of times, so the best way to do this is actually have a pre-show, have a couple people talking back and forth using the system that they're going to use, and let them go back and forth and chat and everything else, and it kind of warms up the online crowd. It keeps them there in that discussion. It gives you a soft start. So if someone's late, that the people who are doing the pre-show can just fill. You don't have to have a starting soon slide. You don't have to change your countdown clock. You just have those people. There's someone on the other side of the camera going like this, stretch, and they just keep talking. And we've had to do that for up to 20 minutes because the VIP was late. It gives you a lot of flexibility, but most importantly, it lets you test the system. And so one of the things that you want to do is kind of exercise the system before it matters. And so inside of the live stream. And so that's the best way to do that. But yeah, you want to have a lot of checklists of exactly, everyone's got to have the checklist that they're working through, and you can figure out how you manage those. But you should have a list of, I'm looking for this, I'm looking for this, I'm looking for this. Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
When you're running down the checklist, what's the preferred response? Woof or yo?
Not confirmed usually. Usually it's confirmed.
Oh, okay.
Confirmed or yes or go or not go. You don't use go. We can't. So the funny thing is we can't use go because go is part of a call when you're calling a show. Go is they'll say what typically happens is a show caller in a live event will say what needs to happen next and then give a cue that says go. So they don't say go for lights. They say, bring lights up, go. This, go. This, go. So
Ready
the one thing you can't
go.
say, you cannot say in a live event is go. So you confirmed, yes, like that. But we stay away from the go part. Next question.
Next question from Paul Wallace in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Courtney, what's your household internet config? Wi-Fi, Ethernet, switch, etc. How do you handle so many devices?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I didn't know there was going to be a pop quiz this morning. I should have studied.
Yes.
I have my newest router is a Netgear Nighthawk Wi-Fi 6 version, which does really well for downstairs. And it has a little better reach, and it's 3 bands. And then for upstairs, I just run a Ethernet cable up to 1, and I put it in a downstairs closet that's very close to the floor at the very top of that closet to get the second floor with, because I can't run Ethernet through this old house, without incurring great expense. And that handles the upstairs, and it's my old Netgear router upstairs. And for a switch, I have a completely full 8-bit gigabits, 8-port gigabit Netgear switch, unmanaged. And I need to expand it to 16 ports because I get more and more Ethernet connections in my entertainment system over there with all the streaming devices and tuners that send stuff over my network, et cetera, et cetera. I just need to add a few more ports because every TV, every Yamaha AV amplifier, and Blu-ray players, got a TiVo. Everything takes a network connection these days, and I've been running them all wired locally. The exception is all the Internet of Things, all of the things that control the lights, like that switch on and off the award lights back there and the colored lights back there. Those are all on 2.4 gigahertz, and so I like to keep them separate on a separate SSID. So I just use that SSID to log into those to make sure that they stay on 2.4 gigahertz.
Next question.
Next question from Julius Evans in New Orleans, Louisiana. Any recommendations for a PC Mobile Workstation as a one-machine-does-all approach to solo creativity?
Go ahead, Guy.
Didn't say how much. We're expensive friends. Here it goes. No. Puget Systems has been on before. Those guys have some really nice prepackaged systems. I would start there. There's also some rack mount Dells that Jeff Keithley has turned us on to. So a lot of us will take loads off on separate PCs. So that way we don't need just one super powerful machine. We just distribute the workload. And then the cutting machine will generally be a little bit more robust. But if you want the most expensive thing out there, the government uses some of these big bad boys. These are Acme portables. And you can see they got the dual flip up with the gas struts. And then they got massive RAIDs on the back. These things are crazy. I'll put a link in the chat if you want to take a look at these.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, when she said, Julius, he or she said mobile workstation, I was thinking laptop. But so I think a guy has a better suggestion if you're looking at a full workstation. But as we were saying earlier, these gaming laptops are, not that expensive. Here's one for around $2,500. It's an MSI Raider. It has a 13th gen i9 in it, so I don't know, it's 24 cores, something like that. It's loaded up with RAM and a GeForce 4070 graphics, which is pretty darn good. You might want to hook it up to some type of hub or port if you have a lot of things to connect to it, and it has a decent display. So, you can get those are pretty good performers and then can handle most of your editing software or any type of creative software that you're going to use. And it has a full keyboard with a numeric keypad, et cetera, et cetera. You could plug a tablet into it if you want to use it for a drawing type input device. So, and it's portable. The only thing is these 17-inch screens, they're pretty heavy. They're like 6.5 pounds or something like that to carry around with you. And the power supply is a big brick, about the size of an actual brick, to power the thing.
Yeah, the one that I've seen on set with folks that are using PCs for a variety of VR stuff and everything else is the Titans, the MSI Titans. They're a little more expensive, but they've got 4090 cards in them, and they're pretty snappy. But they I think they started about $5,300. Next question.
Next question's from Brett Below in Appleton, Wisconsin. In an attempt to avoid shame and ridicule for using a Focusrite Scarlett 2i2, I'm looking for a better audio interface for my Mac. What does the panel recommend for a decent preamp gain control similar price point to the Focusrite, $200 to $400?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
No shame and ridicule coming to you from here, Brett. The Focusrite is not a bad one. It seems like the lower number, the 2i2, seems to have some issues, but no shame and ridicule. If you're looking for an alternative, Bill Davis uses a Apollo Solo, which is just under $500 if you can go that way. The neat thing about it is that you can run some plugins in it real time, and he is using a Cedar plugin for noise reduction.
And Courtney, how much is the Rodecaster? That's more expensive, right? That's on the $600 or $700 range.
Yeah, I think it's close to $699, something like that. I can't remember, but yeah.
And then I think
$600 to $700.
If you're, it depends on how many inputs you need as well. So, there's the F3, which is Zoom makes the F3, which I think is in that range. Go ahead, John.
This is really funny, Brett, because I don't know, the first month I was on office hours, Alex is there and he's like, whatever you do, don't get this Scarlett 2i2, which is what I've been using for years. And then I dropped that and I moved up to the Claret line, which is one step above. And then there's Red on top of that. Claret line's okay. But after I bought my Mix Pre 10 from Guy Cochran, everything else pales by comparison. Get a Mix Pre and be done.
Yeah. the Scarlett, I've had plenty of people who have had a lot of success with the Scarlett, and they're fine. The only thing I relate to is the number one piece of hardware that has taken the most time of my life away from me has been the Scarlett 2i2. And the reason is someone on the remote side, and everything was working, and then it just stops working. Like nothing that we know of was changed, and suddenly we're not getting audio. And it just is so frustrating. Like, and it just, and so it just makes that box just makes me angry. Next question.
Next question's from Zach Jeffers in Spokane, Washington. Did Alex ever land on a horizontal 3-to-1 style LCD?
I did. I got the same one that Bo got, or I think it was Bo that had talked about it. I haven't put it anywhere yet. It still sits here. I know where I want it. I want it underneath I either want it underneath or above my switcher, and I just haven't been able to get the gear put together. So I'm in the process right now of building 3D models of most of the gear that I want to mount. And once I do that, then I can model it out and then print it out and then put everything kind of where I want it. Then I'm going to go over to Chris's house and we'll build it all out of wood. So we'll stream building the desk at Chris's house, having some Sprite.
Still holding my breath.
Yeah, see Sprite. Well, I'll bring over a pack of Sprite. Next question.
Next question from
I don't know.
Paul
What do you want
Wallace.
me to bring over? See, Chris, what should I bring over? Oh, Pepsi. Okay. There we go. Pepsi Cola. All right. There you go. Oh, what is it?
It's got to have real sugar. Real sugar.
Ah, there we go. Perfect. Okay. Noted. I'll bring a case of that. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Hot Springs, Arkansas. What's the best pen or marker to write on an iPhone clear case?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Not sure why you're wanting to do this, but a lot of times in the motion picture industry, we always use these China markers, which will mark on glass, cellophane, and you can wipe it off with a little alcohol to clear it off of whatever you're marking on it. They come in a variety of colors. If you want a dry erase marker, there are dry erase markers with fine tip, but they don't, if you brush against them, the mark goes away. So that China marker has the most indelible but removable, is what I would suggest. I'd stay away from a Sharpie because it doesn't always come off, especially if it's a vinyl type case. It can soak into the plastic and you'll never get it off.
Sharpie. That's the only thing I would use. Sharpie. And the key is if it's clear, you can write backwards. Just write backwards with the Sharpie, and then you put it on the inside and it'll work. But Sharpies are the best. The one thing I just thinking about Sharpies. Sharpies have been like in production. You can't get caught on the back of a set without a Sharpie. You're like, someone will be there like, yeah, go ahead, Chris. What were you gonna say?
Please realize Alex is joking. Do not write on your iPhone with a Sharpie.
No, he's writing on his case. He's writing on his clear case on an iPhone. It's not on the iPhone. He has a clear case for
He
the
wants
iPhone.
it to be permanent?
He wants to draw on it. He said the best pen or marker to write on an iPhone. I think that's the best pen or marker to write on an iPhone. By the way, if you have a clear case and it's smooth, with a Sharpie, the secret to Sharpies, which I learned after searching on the internet after my son had this thing, and he thought it was really cool to go big circles on my whiteboard with a Sharpie. And so I had all these swirls. If you take the Sharpie and you scribble over the marker, the Sharpie marker, and then you wipe it off, it'll wipe right off. It'll just about always
Dry
come
erase.
off the dry erase. No, you can do it with if you do it with a Sharpie on a dry erase, and then you scribble
solvent.
Yeah, if you scribble on it and then you'll wipe it off, and that's they can take a Sharpie off of a dry erase board.
I always scribbled over the Sharpie with a dry erase to get the Sharpie.
I do it with the Sharpie.
It just works. If the Sharpie's still.
Once you make it wet again, it'll come right off. But you have to do it immediately. Anyway, but it has to be right after it, or you just have more to work with. And they make solvents for it as well. But yeah, the Sharpies, if you're in production, the one thing you don't want to be caught without. Usually in my bag, I've got a black Sharpie. I've got the standard black Sharpie, and I have a silver Sharpie for gaff tape. And then I have usually a fine tipped Sharpie that I use for to mark the board, and so that I don't write on the board itself. I write on tape. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Great Sharpie practical joke. If you think about it, Sharpie is a white pen with a colored cap. Okay,
change the colors.
A friend of mine changed all the caps on. I used to carry a
That's
bag
not okay.
of.
It's not okay.
It was hysterical.
It's
I mean,
not a
I was
funny joke.
so furious, but 30 years later, I'm laughing at it.
30 years later, but you didn't
It
talk
took
to her
a
for
while.
29.
It took a while, but I'm now.
Chris, are you
laughing
the
at it.
same person that
You called
punches
him.
all the buttons
You
in an
called him.
elevator?
Yes, I've done that.
I did that once. I did that once as a 9-year-old in the federal building in Pittsburgh. And it was like 3 people in the United States, the U.S. Attorney's Office, just staring at my father, and I hit them all. It was like 60 some floors.
I don't know
It
what
was-
it's called now, but it used to be called the Rainbow Hilton. It's the one on Waikiki with the rainbow on the side of it. It's like 29 stories. We were there as little kids, and we went to the top floor, hit them all, and then ran down the stairs and beat the elevator. And there's a huge crowd in the lobby. It was
Yeah.
a
It
lot
took
of
half
fun
an
as a
hour to go
kid.
down. No, I did not make friends that day. Next question.
Next question from Zach Jeffers in Spokane, Washington. I need to test a few different options for SRT streaming and would like them all to be tested against the same loads. Any ideas on scaling or building 300 to 100 video feeds to load the systems? Yes, that many.
Yeah, go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, so I would do this with SRT mini server, which can take in 16 SRT feeds, and I would populate as many of those as you need on AWS G4DN 4X larges, and then just stack them up. And then those NDI feeds, you could then just have a NDI bridge running on another machine and route them wherever you want them to go, and that would be the way that I would do it.
Next question.
Next question from Rion Smith in Trinidad, West Indies. Is there a cheap way to mount a 21-inch monitor in a rack case to a 1 or 2U space? I know there are server monitors, but those are expensive. I want a slim, cheaper option.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Well, if you're talking about the kind that mount at the bottom of the monitor and then it pulls out and then slides up, that you could probably get a number of those to do a search on it. 21 inches is certainly way more than 2 units of rack space. So that's probably your only option, is have something that mechanically has that hinge in it.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
I don't think you're going to find a 21 that'll fit in a 19-inch rack space, but good luck. They do make the ones like this one that are designed to pull out into 2U and a 1U space and fold up, like Mitch was saying, but they are kind of pricey.
Yeah, go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I was just down at Noah's and was super impressed with his welding skills and the things that he's building. It's crazy. He rolls in these carts and they built these gas struts that'll flip up. We built something similar out of the Gator. If you Google Gator Cast monitor hack for Blackmagic monitor, it's not as big, but basically we just moved some pins and we were able to take where you would normally put a mixer and let me see when we get to the end. So we show how you drill it
Used
out.
to have that case, yeah.
Yeah,
For my
and
mixer.
so, but we wanted it to sit straight up when it was finished. So at the end, it went like that. So that was down below. And then up top, we stuck the 17 there. And then it locked in place upright. So it's still a very large case, but we were able to carry quite a bit of stuff inside of this case. I'll put a link to the chat inside of this. It certainly was way cheaper than some of the server monitors that you can get for KVMs and things like that. But this allowed us to have the 2-up, some encoders, hard drive, and then we had a TriCaster down below. So this allowed us to have a preview program and then the multi-view up top.
Yeah, and one thing to think about also is on this. What we did for a lot of our cases is the cases themselves had the ability to mount stuff to the side of them, so we weren't pulling it out. We just had another box that came with a bunch of monitors, and we could mount them to either side of the case, and that worked pretty well as well. Next question.
Next question from Scott Mueller in Germantown, New York. Is the Blackmagic Telenex audio to SDI box a good alternate to using the mini 1/8-inch jack to get audio into an ATEM Extreme? Will there be any audio latency coming in this way?
There shouldn't be any audio latency or very, very little. I mean, it'd be almost, and this is audio to SDI. So what you want to do, what I'm assuming you're doing is you want to take the audio, balanced audio, and you're going to embed it into the SDI in there. And the one thing you won't be able to do is if there is a delay at all, you won't be able to fix it because you can't change you can only delay the analog channels coming into the ATEM. You can't delay the ones that are coming in via SDI. It's kind of a little bit of an issue there. But I do believe that you could embed those in there, and you'll have balanced audio, and you won't be using the little 1/8-inch jacks. And so I think that it could be there's a lot of people I know that embed those into the cameras. They embed them into the cameras. They embed them into find other ways to do it, because the little micro or mini 1/8 jacks in the extremes is definitely one of the real shortcomings of the switcher. I use the switcher every day. I love it. I just don't use it for audio because it has those mini jacks and it doesn't have TA3s. Next question.
Next question's from David Brady in New York, New York. Hey, not sure if rundownstudio.io has been discussed before. Has anyone checked it out? Any thoughts if so?
Is this John Barker's new app? Yeah, I think this is. Is it? Is it John Barker? I don't know if this is. It has this kind of nice. It looks expensive enough that I don't think that this is. I don't think this is John's. Didn't John have one that he just built? Yeah, I find it funny. Rundown Studio versus Google Sheets, because the problem they have is that 99% of all shows, the rundown is Google Sheets. so anyway, and ShowFlow and Rundown Creator are the two other ones that are really big. So I haven't played with Rundown Studio. I do not think that this isn't the one. I don't think that John Barker just built, but I don't have the name of his, and I haven't needed to do this kind of rundown for a little while. So I haven't played with it enough. But we'll take a look at it. Haven't looked at it. It looks great. As far as the design goes, we'd have to compare it. But ShowFlow, and then again, Rundown Creator is more for broadcast. ShowFlow is more for events. But they're comparing themselves to ShowFlow. So I'm assuming that they're not trying to do a broadcast show like what we're doing. They're trying to do a show, there's a lot of, the thing about ShowFlow, it'd be really interesting to see how they compare themselves to that. This is the, let me see if you're watching here.
Rundown Studio is John Barker's.
Is it?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. There you go. He's gone up in cost. so I was like, so that's good. I mean, I think that it's, the one thing I will say is John Barker has done a lot of production. So I have a feeling that it's going to think about what those things are, because it really is written by somebody who knows it. And I don't know if John, if you're listening to our show, I know John listens to our show sometimes, and let's see here. I would do this in a side-by-side column. Anyway, John, you're more than welcome to come on. We'd love to have you on, have you talk about it. I think we need to have John on to know how it works. So hopefully someone just reach out to John. He's a friend of the show. So but I'd love to see more about it, because finding this ShowFlow hasn't been a one-to-one setup for us. We worked with ShowFlow and then we went back to Google Sheets. Next question.
Next question from Zach Jeffers in Spokane, Washington. I've been looking to get the X32 for my fly rack, but the Presonus Series 3 16R is only 1U, which is attractive. Any thoughts on the X32 plus Dante versus the 16R plus AVB?
Yeah, go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same boat. I almost bought a Midas M32R yesterday from a local church. I've been listening online. Thankfully, this is another great use of YouTube, is to be able to go in and listen to those pre's, because a lot of folks will say, the Behringer's okay, but it doesn't have, people love the rack. I know John Pardo's got one. I know Alex has got one. So I wanted to get one just to learn it. And our church is using an MR18. And so I figured if I was going to buy an MR18, may as well get a used M32 rack and then get a Dante card. So I'm on the same boat as you. I'm on the same path. So I'm going to go research the Presonus now to figure out what else I need in my life. But it's, looking at the new Yamaha that's coming out, I think it's the DM3 or one of those. There's some Alan Heath stuff. There's just so much good stuff. I'm sure Mickey or somebody in the chat will also throw some other things your way to take a look at. But yeah, I'm on the same boat. But I'd be looking at the M32R with the Dante card as well, just because you get the sweeter pre's. Unless you're using a stage box, I think it's the S16 that now you use those pre's on the stage box. So it just depends on what you want to do with the thing and how much capability, ins and outs, that you actually need and where you want to go in the future.
Yeah, I think that for me, I'm not like, I have to be able to use Dante, so that's not like it. As soon as I don't have Dante, I'm like, oh, I'm not interested. So being able to do that, and then I think that there's more IO in the Behringer. than this 16R. So I think that would be something that, I mean, if I'm using it, that's what I'd be using it for. I have had the M box. I don't know. I think, is that the one you're talking about? The 1U Dante only, or 1U that's all just an M32 or an X32 or M32 or whatever that's in one unit. We've used those as one. There used to be a Behringer version, not a Midas version of that.
The one that I was going to buy was a monster M32 with 16 motorized faders. So it's a big bad boy.
Yeah, the problem that I have, we've gotten those. We've had a bunch of ones that'll fit into the producer version, that'll fit into the rack, the really large ones with a ton of faders. And the real issue that we had was running all the cables over there. Really took once I started running all the cables over, I was like, I'm going to use a Q01. Once I went down the path of I'm going to pack all those cables over, now I'm using a Q01 or Q05. So for the kind of shows that I would use a Behringer for, this is what really happened was I don't view the Behringer as a main show production unit. As far as like the kind of shows that we work on, we usually go to the Yamahas, the Q01s, the Q05s, and then up from there. And we have in the shows that we've done recently, we've had Digicos and SSLs and Calrex. And so I don't think that, for me, it's like, hey, this show fits into a box that is not super high, not super expensive show, that I want a lot of I/O, that I want it to be mechanically correct and do the thing it needs to do. And inside of that, I don't buy any of the X32s anymore. I used to. I had a lot of X32s that were had faders and everything else, but I generally just get the rack. And then I have an X-Touch or I have software running it or whatever, because that's the box that the X32 fits into in my head. Like I'm not, they're not high enough end for me to put them into a larger solution. Yeah, go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I'm not the expert on this, but the stage boxes, like on the QLs, I know that they'll use the Rios, but this is also what I was looking at, pairing it with either a Behringer S32 through AES 50, I believe it is, or it's a
this is their alternate.
5.
I think it uses their alternate. Is there these stage boxes? I haven't used the S32, but I've used the S8 and the S16.
Yeah, so it's just one cable, then you get all of that I/O over the one box. You can throw that up on the stage or wherever it needs to go, and so that's an option as well. It's AES50. Mickey confirms. I think it's an EtherCon connection.
Yeah, and I've definitely used in one of my studios. I had an S16 or S8, and it was great. Like we put it under the table, and now all my little bits and pieces. Maybe it was an S16 because it had more I/O. Anyway, so that worked fairly well. Go ahead, Mitchell.
The Midas pedigree for preamps is pretty good, and it's been used quite a bit. You would think now that they're part of Behringer that they would sort of migrate some of those preamps over to the Behringer X32 products. They have. Those are the M32s. The M32s are the X, and it's more than that. If you look at Dave Rat, actually tore some of these apart, and the M32s are not the same as the X32s. It's not just the preamps, all the wiring and everything else. You tear that apart, and it's a different beast. So it's a much more reliable. Right, the M32s are a much different box than the X32s. So if you really want that higher end, but again, once I start talking about M32s, I very quickly graduate to Yamahas. So next question.
From Jack Rupel in Breckenridge, Colorado, asked day before yesterday about VR 180 content, not mine, online content, overall horribly shot with subject too close, moving too much, free background music. Apple spatial video will be a train wreck. Comments?
Well, you would assume that people are going to shoot that footage the same way, and that probably wouldn't be super accurate. I have a feeling that Apple is going to put a lot of effort and time into shooting. I think we're going to see footage from Apple next year. I believe that what we've seen so far of the headset, of the Vision Pro, is about 5% of the powder that Apple has behind that headset. Be clear, this is not a sideshow. This is not like a little extra. This is where they see the future of computing. And so Apple is the masters of keeping the powder dry. So you should expect to see a lot more, and they have all the money, and they'll spend all the money on. I think some of the examples you're going to see as this starts to come out are going to be pretty pretty amazing. And we've shot definitely stuff for Meta and for Google and for others long ago, 5-6 years ago, that was very compelling. It's just that shooting with little cameras and then also not understanding how a lot of what you see online are shot by people who've only shot maybe 30, 40 hours of footage. You don't get good at doing VR until you've shot a couple hundred hours of footage and looked at it, because you learn what you can and can't do with the camera, what you can and can't do with the people, what you can and can't do. There's a whole bunch of things that it's not filmmaking. It's not filmmaking the way you think of it. It's a completely different, process, and it takes all of us time to figure out how to do that. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, and if they're hand-holding the phone to shoot this spatial stuff in prep for, or if they're using, maybe they have the prototype of the Vision Pro and they're, jumping around on their headset, if it doesn't have any kind of gimbal or image stabilization, that's probably going to make a lot of people sick very fast.
You really can't move the camera. So it depends on what you're doing. When you're doing 180, the camera in general needs to stay where it is. You can move a little bit, but you have to remember that the problem that we have is that our inner ear isn't moving. So our inner ear doesn't have any movement going on with it, but our eyes are seeing things translating. That makes people sick. A lot of people sick. When they have that, and the reason for that is that the when your inner ear doesn't match your eyes, your brain for a million years, that meant you are being poisoned. You ate the wrong berries, so usually what the machine does, our machine, is get everything out of your stomach. Like just get it all out of there, because whatever you ate isn't good for you. And so that's what it was for a million years. And so now in the last couple of years, the last second of our existence, we've now done this thing where we can change what we're seeing versus what we're feeling. And so you have to be very careful of moving the camera. We used to do this thing. We had this test that we were doing with an Ozo. We had the Ozo sitting on top of a Steadicam, and we would move really slowly, and people would feel it. And then right at the very end, I have to admit, it was a bad joke. Right at the very end, my brother would just spin the Ozo to 90 degrees, because that's what he does when he's done. So it takes less weight, and that's how he pulls it back in. So he'd go down this thing, and then he'd spin it like this, and every single time you could see someone just pull the headset. We always knew when they were done, because they'd pull the headset off their head as fast as they could, because that would make their whole inner ear go crazy. So the big thing is, if you keep the camera stationary, you keep your subjects 5 to 15 feet away that matter, and you manage your lighting and everything else, you can get some pretty impressive experiences. If you do anything outside of that, it drops off pretty quickly. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
So here's a tip. If you find someone that has the new Vision Pro and gets used to watching that handheld video on their Vision Pro, you can poison them very easily and steal their Vision Pro. So
exactly.
There's your solution.
But, I think that you just want to look at getting a good tripod if you're going to do a lot of that stuff. Now, you can get away with that's 180. If you're shooting with your phone, you can actually get away with a lot more movement, because that's going to be a 16:9 rectilinear inside of a space. As long as the person with the headset can see something that isn't moving, it doesn't bother them. It's when they see something that when they don't have a frame of reference is when they get sick. Next question.
Next question from Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. I'm having some major audio dropout issues with NDI Studio Monitor. I've been using it to show my VMix output up until a few weeks ago. Now only the video comes through with no issues. Any ideas?
Good guy.
Yeah, I'd have to look at the whole topology and see what switch you're using, and if you're using a separate NIC card. In a case like that, if you're just outputting out a VMix and you want stability and you don't have a properly configured NDI end-to-end solution, then I would just go VB audio cable and pump the audio out that way out of VMix and external. When you click the little external button, you can also just push out regular webcam UVC type output out of VMix. But if you want to use NDI, I would use a separate NIC. So you would have two NICs, one dedicated to NDI specifically, and then a managed switch where you're running either MDNS properly configured through a properly configured switch like this M4250. If you were to export the profile that they have for NDI 5 and look at all the tweaks that they have for these managed switches, it's amazing how many things that you really can get wrong with configuration. So if you have some other Ruckus or some kind of higher end Meraki or whatever switch, then some of those settings can derail your NDI. So for the basic stuff, I would just go with external output out of VMix and just say UVC, pick up the camera there, and then VB audio cable and take it out of there. I wouldn't use NDI unless for a rock solid show, that's how I would get it out, or through a Blackmagic Decklink or AJA card. But I wouldn't use NDI unless you know what you're doing and you have a managed switch and separate NIC and properly configured system.
Next question.
Zach Jeffers in Spokane, Washington. In regards to the previous question about the iPhone heatsink in the Apple video, it's actually a heatsink, hot glued. Look again.
I just don't think I saw. I don't think I saw this clip. But yeah, you're right. It is. It is a hot. Here's what he's showing. I do not know what this would be used for. So this is what he's showing here. Is this hot sink? It looks like it's to the moment rig, but there's also like a USB. I don't know what this is. I don't know why you have this Ethernet or this what I'm going to guess is I don't know what that's for. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I think hot glue was a wrong chance, a wrong selection because it's melting because it gets too hot.
I just don't.
But I
know.
imagine if the iPhone is trying to stream 444, ProRes to an externally hooked up NVMe drive, maybe it's going to heat up trying to do all that quickly. But it looks like a heat sink. But the other thing I was thinking is, I can't quite see it that clearly on my monitor, but I was thinking there are a lot of NVMe drive containers, drive caddies, that have a heatsink on them to reduce the heatsink from the drive itself. Maybe that was what it is, but it looks actually like a bigger heatsink than that.
I don't know. We'll have to.
And I would use silicone heatsink adhesive,
I just don't know
which they make.
I don't know what you need to cool in that part of the phone. That's the part that I don't understand. So anyway, it'd be really interesting to. We'll do some research. Next question.
From Tommy Shantz in St. Paul, Minnesota, USA, what is the solution for selecting the wanted frame from an iPhone movie photo on a Windows computer?
Take the move into Resolve, which is free on your Windows computer, and export a frame. like that's the easiest way to do that. Like I'm just telling you, like you can do a lot of different things, but that's going to be quick and easy to do it. You'll be able to grab onto any of those frames. I don't know of any easy way to do that off of. I think you'll spend more time fiddling with it. The Resolve is free, and I would use that. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
There's plenty of applications. If you're playing it back full frame in a video player, there's a hotkey that you can do a screen grab with, and it'll just put a.
The key is that the Resolve will export the actual frame from the actual footage as opposed to a screen capture, which I wouldn't want to use a screen capture if I didn't. I'll never use a screen capture unless I'm backed into a corner.
Yeah, because the screen capture will go through color correction and whatever you have in your pipeline to put it the right color for your screen. So bear that in mind.
Next question.
From Dale Nabetta in Oakland, California, has anyone had any experience with the Samsung T9 portable SSD?
I have not used the T9, so I have lots and lots of T5s. I have some T7s, and I have so many T5s laying around that I haven't needed to have a T9 to use. So I haven't gotten to play with it yet. Next question.
Next question from David Brady in New York, New York, looking for a solution to get audio out of an Apple TV 4K into my Bowers & Wilkins Panorama soundbar. Problem is, it's only got Toslink. Any good de-embedders out there? I saw this one from...
And CJ?
Unless maybe it's an earlier Panorama soundbar that doesn't support eARC. I know the modern ones support eARC, and that's where it'll send that audio signal over the HDMI cable back to the soundbar. I was really bummed when I found out Toslink doesn't support Atmos or some of the newer higher bitrate connections, I guess, because there's some conflict about the standards. So I kind of had to move away from the Toslink SPDIF cable. Although if you really need to go with that connector, you can get on B&H some HDMI audio extractors. The thing that you got to really be careful with there is, does the specific extractor support the video pass-through without affecting the signal quality? If you're trying to get 4K 120 and you use a really inexpensive budget HDMI audio extractor, you're going to lose something there.
Next question.
Next question from Danny Grizzle in Longview, Texas. For a one-man band or small crew, I'm thinking of building a van and looking at production carts. What are the pros and cons of folding carts like innovative versus non-folding like studio carts and tie-down systems and trucks? Brand recommendations?
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, Film Tools has some really nice carts. If you go to their website and take a look, if you can get to their showroom in LA, they got some really great stuff. I was looking at Noah's setup. He does a lot of corporate gigs where he rolls in, and so he's built these ones by himself. I would actually reach out to Noah Sargent on Discord, and these are homemade ones. And he's actually got a newer version. I don't have a close-up picture of the newer one. So he's gone through several iterations so that he can wheel in his mixer. For the event that we're doing next week, it has two trays, so we have on the sides that come out so that we can actually have an operator for the PTZs on one side, and then I'll be running the cable cam on the other side. So not only is it a cart that we can wheel in that has all the gear in it with all the cables and then the flip-up monitor that you just saw, but then there's two workstations that fold out the side. So it depends on what you want to do. You know, do you need streaming encoders? Do you need cables? How much GAC do you need to carry? Are you bringing in lights in addition to the cameras? How many carts? Because at Cinegear we showed some motors that'll hook onto carts, so it does get super heavy that you can just have it kind of wheel along with you. And somebody else, I think it was David Brady, was showing that there's a golf cart that'll golf caddy that'll follow you. There's like an auto follow mode, so if you don't need something super heavy, I'd take a look at some of the golf carts as well that can go up hills and up steep terrain with these big wheels. These because that's the thing, is it's all about the wheels. You know, you want stuff that can cross over thrushes, and if there is cable, what do you call those raceways that you need to sometimes get over, you want to be able to get over them without dropping everything.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, as far if you're building a van specifically for hauling equipment around, I would not go with a folding cart. Go with a cart that you can leave upright and lash to the side of the van, tie it off very stably at the top and at the bottom. And because of folding carts are not very stable because they're designed to fold up, and they've got, scissored type hinges in them, and so they tend to be fairly wobbly. And you don't want to disassemble everything to get it to the location, then reassemble it all and wire it back up again. That takes a large amount of time with the fold down carts, and I would only go with that if you have like a station wagon or something where you can't roll up a ramp into the back of your vehicle. If you have to take it all apart and put it back in cases, that doubles your time to get to the set and get set up. It's better to have a van with a pair of ramps that you can lash everything to a very stable cart that has that's not designed to fold, that has welded joints and pneumatic wheels. Roll it into the back and lash it to the side.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, Noah actually has an equipment trailer, which is a much lower load deck than even a van. And that's something to think about too. I mean, think about the Egyptians making the pyramids. How long does the ramp have to be? And in Noah's, I believe it's the whole back door is the ramp. It's one of those kind of deals. And absolutely, Noah has worked really hard to make his setup and tear down quite easily.
I've tended to go with things that are a little bit more case driven. I mean, just the way I kind of work. So if you look at this is a really basic kit that we built. This is a 3-camera BRC system, and so this is the case. The ends of the case turn into tables, and we kind of build out from there. And I've built many versions of this. so this is one. Sometimes they have 2 or 3 of those long cases there. And then what I use the van for is to get them around. So I have a lift gate on the back. We put them up in there. Our setup time for this one, I think our target setup time for this was 20 minutes. So we had to be able to, from the time we rolled into the room, it had to be operational in 20 minutes with 2 people. And so that's what it took. And the one person was setting up the cameras and running the cables to the person. But this takes 20 because almost everything is all built into the case itself. And those are 2 elementals. So this is not like a cheap case. This is still like a, $80,000 case, but it works really well. And in some of the cases we've added, we have an audio rack, a video rack, and then usually a GAC rack. And those are 3 of them that go together. And that one, the target was 45 minutes, but it had, free speak and, lots of other stuff built into it. So, and so those are ones when we know we're going to do the same thing over and over again that we would build. And, we built these, let's see, I think I have some more pictures. This is kind of what it looked like. You can see the BRCs there. This is what we built. We drilled these in and then machined these so that we could throw the monitors onto them. And so they, but again, in 20 minutes, this thing was, operational. Everything's marked. Everything's ready to go. And then the big thing is that if you look back at it, like inside of it are all the cases that hold all the things that need to go into the thing. So it's pretty quick. I think there might have been a cranky case that went with that. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Is there any chance, Alex, we could do a second hour on the photo album on your computer called Difficult? That sounds super interesting.
It's difficult.
You have a photo
too.
album
I was
called
like, I want that
Difficult.
one.
I don't even see it.
It's down at the bottom. I just imagine these are like nightmare shows that didn't go well. This is the Difficult photo album.
Here's the funny thing is I have so many weird difficult. I think, and sometimes it might have been the start of something.
I'm totally cool with doing a full second hour on this.
Yeah, there's only 3 photos. It wasn't.
Okay.
I don't know what I was thinking. I'll just, it was just. This was our old Hangout rig that we had there. That's how we did Hangouts. There's Shannon running the rig. This was, I don't know what we were shooting there, but it was a Cinedrive that we were using. And then this was me building this little hand rig that you could, and I don't know why I called it Difficult. I'm sure that there was a reason
There's
for it.
3 photos of Fenwick in the Difficult folder. That's what.
Yeah, exactly. If I had thought about that ahead of time, I would have added, here's a picture of Chris. Here's a picture of Chris. Next question.
Next question from Rion Smith in Trinidad, West Indies. How thick of neoprene did you suggest yesterday for the stabilization of bass vibrations coming up a tripod or light stand to the camera?
We grabbed what we could on a roll, and I think it was half inch. And then I think we just made layers of it and then put them into things. And so I think it might have ended up being like a 1 inch or 1.5 inch, but it was half inch strips or a half inch roll is what we bought. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I've been using this stuff from Amazon called Yolshai window air conditioner foam tape. It's 1 inch by 1 inch and has adhesive back on it. You can stack them next to each other, and it's very absorptive of vibration. Use it for shock mounts for microphones.
Next question.
Back again, Rion Smith from Trinidad, West Indies. Is the Samsung T5 better than an NVMe holder with an M2 drive in it for the ATEM Extreme ISO recording?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I think they both would be a little bit of overkill. The T5 would be just fine with an H.264 ISO recording. The NVMe2 would be fine for coming right out of a camera. It has a much bigger rate coming out of it.
Yeah, the problem with if you do a really long show, the problem with the T5s is when they get to about 400 gigs, they just dump. Like they just overheat and stop. And so the T7 has the same problem. This is the Oyen Digital, which we got out of some Cinegear, which I like a lot. And if I've recorded, that's usually one of the things I like to record on. Now, I build my own. These are a Neo makes these. This has actually a fan that runs down the ribs, and it turns on and tells you whether it's going hot. And then this one is we talked about this one before. This is also another a Neo, I think, there. This is like a little one that I put together. I like them. The advantage of the T5 mostly is that it goes into a lot of camera rigs really easily because they're built around them. Next question.
Next question from Pedro G. Gonzalez III in Oklahoma City. Do LED 1x1 light panels for $1,000 plus really outperform the $200 1x1 lights? Strictly speaking about light quality, not network connectivity, control, or batteries.
Go ahead, Guy.
It depends. I mean, LEDs have gotten so much better over the years. The original light panels, when they first came out, they had a slight green cast to them. And just the way that they would dim them, it would shift the CRI and the actual, you could visually see it, especially on people and on chip charts, you would be able to see this color cast. And so they built in correction for that. Some of the cheaper lights will still have this ability to correct. So I have a spectrometer and I could measure, if you showed me the $200 one, I grab my spectrometer, I can hit it. And if you measured pure daylight, so if I'm looking outside and I take my spectrometer and I hit it, it's going to say 100. So pure daylight is 100 CRI. It's the best you can get. Now, some of these cheap ones, I've seen them go down to in the 60s, and that's where it's just nasty, and it makes it really difficult to color correct this stuff. So can a modern day $200 LED light outperform a $1,000 light panel of yesterday? Absolutely. Yeah, there is inexpensive, because so these Chinese factories are pumping out these lights. Believe me, I did this for a living. I sold a lot of lights and manufactured a lot of lights. So when you're looking at these inexpensive lights, they've copied us, the guys who did all the research and figured this out and figured out how to dim and still maintain color accuracy. And now they're pumping them out, buying 10, 20,000 of these at a time and getting them down to $200. And so, yeah, but I would do the research and see if somebody who has one of these meters has measured that $200 one to see if it's actually worthy. Because even these Amaran lights, this P60C that I just got is amazing. So if you're looking at a light, go look at the Amaran P60C. It's on a Black Friday sale right now.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I agree with Guy. I mean, to get from here to here, you could probably spend $200, but to get from here to there, probably spend about $2,000. I have a light panel, the brand name, 1x1, and it's very soft and nice looking and very, very accurate color. I'd put it up against just about any import down below price range.
Yeah, I'm just amazed that I started with light panels, I don't know, a long time ago, 15 years ago, and spent a lot of money on them. I had like 20 of them or something like that, and used them all over the place, and they were great. I can't believe what I can do with a NAND light now. the NAND lights are just, and they're more power and they're more, they're more all the things, and they're not that expensive. It's really kind of become amazing. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks to the panel for all the great work. And it's great on a Saturday to have a nice when we start these on Saturday, I'm like, oh, this will be a short show. And then it never is. It almost never is. It's always like we always get to the end there. And that has to do with, of course, the great panel answering the questions, as well as the incredible producers asking all the questions that we do here. So thank you so much for your contribution here. Reminder, we won't use the QR code on Sunday because we don't record. So if you have stuff, there's a couple people that have some stuff that are put in the QR code. That'll be on Monday. But thank you for throwing those questions into Makana or into the QR code. And thanks to the incredible team on the back end that is programming this, editing this 7 days a week, as well as planning them and figuring this all out. So we really appreciate everybody's contribution. We traveled 71,000 miles, 115,000 kilometers, and that is 566 million bananas for scale. All right, let's go ahead and jump into After Hours.
Great job, CJ. You can read anytime, day of the week.
Thank you.
And a reminder that we're just about to start the volunteer meeting. So if you're interested in that, you can jump into that. I'll put a post out for it. All right, thanks.
Volunteers.
See ya.
Bye-bye.